You got the old school Grizzlies going. I love it.
Yeah, they adapt. It used to be Vancouver, but they threw the Memphis on there, so kind of blend the old with the new. So it's like one of my favorite little hoodies that I wear.
Dude, I love it. I think it's like 96, 97, maybe.
Oh yeah.
When they had that, I guess when the Raptors and the Grizzlies came into the league.
Those were some epic vintage logos there.
Two of the best. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for joining me here today, and looking forward to catching up with you. We obviously have a history together, going back to our youth, but I want to start at the beginning of your coaching career. Much like you, I also began coaching in college through U Sports, Boulder Rec Center, YMCA, and I think I had heard a rumor that you started coaching in college as well, and I think you wore a suit to those youth basketball games. So I just want to take you back to the beginning of your career. Can you confirm that you did wear a suit, and just kind of talk about the origins of your coaching?
Yeah, well, Evan, it's awesome. Thank you for welcoming, on your podcast, and to know about your career and your journey, so many different coaching experiences, a lot of different levels. It's really cool. And to be able to connect here and share our experiences and talk about the things that we love, this is gonna be a lot of fun. But yeah, I can absolutely confirm that I started coaching basketball when I was a sophomore in college at Penn. A couple buddies and I started a basketball program out in West Philadelphia, and we'd have practice once a week. We'd have games on Saturdays. It was boys and girls ages 10 to 13. And a guy you probably remember from St. Mark's, one of my classmates, Paul Trejo, he and I were roommates all 4 years in college. And we're sitting there going, how can we make this experience really valuable for these kids? How are they going to come in every single day knowing that we care about them, that we're taking this serious? We want them to take it serious and try to get something out of it. We're going to teach them basketball, but we're going to teach them responsibility, discipline, accountability, life skills, things that hopefully they could just take into the outside world. And lo and behold, we said, let's wear some suits. Let's really look like coaches on the sidelines here. So when it came to game day, we started wearing suits, and all the other coaches maybe looked around and were kind of poking fun. Like, hey, why are y'all doing this and doing this? And when they got the message league wide, everyone started wearing suits and kind of took it up a notch. So it was such an unbelievable experience. I mean, I'm not here as a head coach in the NBA without having done that. Just kind of, pouring myself into one of my passions, and what I love to do is teach, and I love sports. So through my journey, which I imagine we're going to talk about, my love of basketball and my love of teaching just kind of collided in college. And then I just kind of took it from there.
Incredible. Look good, feel good. And I love that it was started being a contagious thing around the league. That's really cool. And were you always kind of thinking about high level coaching in your mind at this point, or was this something that naturally grew as you went through your experiences?
Yeah, it definitely naturally grew. I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do when I was in college. I mean, I thought I was going to get into politics. I was in student government when I was in high school at St. Mark's. Started taking some classes, started recognizing, hey, life after college, you're going to have to, make a decision here sooner rather than later. Transferred over and got a management degree, a business degree. And then as I was going through that process, I was starting to realize, okay, what am I really going to do here? And, my aunt on one of my holiday breaks said, well, can you do something with your passion for sports and, your background in business? And I was like, yeah, I just don't know what. And she goes, well, why don't you try to be a GM one day? And I was like, okay. So I started off on the front office. After a year and a half with the Spurs, I ultimately decided, let me take that leap of faith and try to dive into, my ultimate passion of coaching and try to give this a go. But, I've always taken my career just one step at a time. I had visions of one day, honestly, I would love to go back to our alma mater at St. Mark's and be a coach and an advisor and a teacher there, because that schooling experience had such an impact on my life growing up. But I just kind of take, every opportunity that's thrown my way one step at a time. And, people along the way, coaches, mentors, people I've worked for in the NBA have always just said, don't ever rush the process. Just take every opportunity that's presented to you. And if it's a good one for you, take full advantage of it. But don't try to put anything ahead of you. 5 years, I have to be this, 10 years, I have to be that. Obviously, I have goals. Once I got in the business, would love to be a head coach. But I just took it 1 year at a time and said, let me just try to learn as much as possible, give of myself as much as possible, and let the rest take care of itself. And, I've been very fortunate along the way. And I can say I've been very blessed to, have my trajectory from San Antonio, Atlanta, Milwaukee, and now here in Memphis.
Very cool. And you're 100% right. It's nice to have that vision that you're always striving towards, but you can't get caught up in that in the day to day. Like you have to focus on what you're doing today, what you're doing this season. You can't start, projecting years in advance. And I love that that was kind of a hallmark of each of these stops. And you mentioned San Antonio. You were there as an ops intern, and then you moved on and worked in the D League team for 4 or 5 years. And you've really had an unconventional path and some unique experiences. And I just want to hear kind of during that time where you're kind of very young, very I'll use the word raw to coaching.
Very true. Very true.
How did you find your coaching voice and your coaching identity during this time?
Yeah, well, Evan, I love how you said that. That's actually something I talk about all the time is your coaching voice. And just for anyone that's curious what coaching voice means to me, coaching voice is not necessarily how you use your voice. A lot of times you hear about coaches, oh, he's a screamer, or, he just, stays in the back and only, picks certain moments to interject. Yes, of course, it's at the end of the day, how you're going to teach and how you're going to present. To me, coaching voice is also, what do you believe in? What's at your core? What are your values? What do you stand for? Because ultimately it's got to start there before you actually even speak it. So for me, when I went to the D League, it was all about just growth. Any opportunity I could get, I was fortunate enough, the Spurs gave me opportunities. One season, 6 months I was in Austin, and then the off season I could spend 6 months in San Antonio. And I got to do that over the course of 5 years. And every single time I got to grow in the summers, then go implement that, on my own. As an actually full-time coach, I've had great mentors in Quinn Snyder, who's, with the Jazz now, and then Brad Jones, who's actually on my staff here in Memphis, but just a collection of different people that just, I took a mentality of just grow, learn as much as you can, figure out what you believe in, what do you like, learn something new. Maybe you don't want that to be part of your coaching voice and your coaching strategies and philosophies. But, being raw, as you said, I knew if I was going to gain the most out of these experiences, I had to just learn from the people that have done it for many, many years. But along that way, really test what I believe in so that if ultimately I got to the level I wanted to, whether that was D League to NBA, assistant coach to head coach, that I was prepared to be able to take on that responsibility of really being able to speak my voice in front of the team and to a staff and really try to build something if I was put in charge.
Yeah, and I know that always when you're a young coach developing, the people that you work with and especially mentors have such a huge influence on you. You mentioned Brad Jones, and I heard you talk before. You talked about living in the gray and not everything is black and white. And if you could just kind of elaborate, what did Coach Jones mean by that? And maybe a little bit too, like what he's meant to you in your development in your career.
Yeah, I mean, he's meant so much to me. I consider him like a big brother to me. He when you're learning as a coach, you're learning all the X's and O's. You're learning this is how you develop a player development program. This is, how you manage a schedule. Like every little bit of details that goes into being a coach or becoming a head coach one day. I'm trying to just master that. But in reality, there's not one way to do something. Being a coach, any part of any sports team, you're going to get your wrinkles, you're going to get your curveballs, you're going to have to adjust. You thought you were going to do it this way, but then something came your way. A player presented something different, a game strategy presented something different, and you had to alter your mentality. So I did as much prep as I could. But then ultimately he took me and just said, hey, all kinds of stuff. Like you're well prepared, you're smart, you work hard, you've got everything, you're going to keep growing, but you got to take a step back and say, okay, well, if I'm going to be a head coach one day, how do I manage all this? How do I, deploy everything that I know? How am I going to be able to handle a lot of different situations that maybe doesn't line up with what I thought was going to happen? That happens in a game, that happens game to game, that happens over the course of an entire season, that happens as your roster changes. So what it comes down to, a lot of people sum it up to is it's feel. How are you going to develop feel as a coach to know in any given situation, how are you going to tackle that? How I coach one player versus another is completely different. How am I going to coach one player on a given day? It's going to be different maybe than the next day. So kind of embracing that mentality was really healthy because it prepares you for all the curveballs and multitude of decisions that you have as a head coach and as a leader of an organization to know that I'm going to do the prep work. I'm going to believe in what I've learned over my many, many years. But when I have to make a decision, it's not always going to be clear cut in the same way every single way. So he invested in me in 2 years to really embrace that. And, as I said, my first 2 years in the D League was just absorbing as much as I could. Quinn Snyder gave me basically a PhD in basketball, master's degree in basketball. And then Brad Jones was able to take that and say, how are you going to get a master's PhD in actually coaching and being a coach at the end of the day? So wouldn't be here without those guys. And obviously very fortunate to have Brad on our staff and imparting that many wisdom to the rest of the staff and our players. But he definitely has always given me something to continue to grow as a head coach as well.
I love that. I think that when I'm listening to you talk, I'm thinking about resiliency, right? Like we can do all the preparation. We can anticipate what the opponent is going to do, but we also have to have this ability to adjust and course correct through the course of a game or the course of a season, whether it's strategy or, like you said, the way that you deal with a player. And I think a lot of that goes back to resiliency and having that ability to adjust. So I appreciate you elaborating on that. And I was going to ask you about the development of coaches in the Spurs organization. And it sounds like to you, not only did you get the chance to work under some really smart people that you were able to learn from, but that this was a very intentional thing that they were doing. You mentioned being in Austin and then going to San Antonio and kind of like learning for 6 months, growing, and then coming back to Austin. So it seems like it was very deliberate in terms of their development of coaches, which you don't always see in NFL or high level college organizations.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was very intentional. Obviously my 5 years as a coach, 6 years in the Spurs program. I was 1 year in the front office. I even felt that on the front office side. And then going from San Antonio to Atlanta with Bud, he carried that same kind of culture. Those places, the people I've been around, it's an environment of care, an environment of development. I use those words a lot, and I can speak to examples of that for sure. But everyone understood that if we're going to be great as a team, if I'm going to be great as a coach, I need others to help me get better. And sometimes it's direct coaching. I had many of the assistant coaches in San Antonio put their arms around me and tell them when I was doing something well and not doing something well. And to me, one of the greatest lines is, if a coach is pouring into you, whether they're telling you good things or sometimes critical feedback, it's because they care. Because they want you to help them get better. They want you to help the players get better. They want you to help the team get better. So it's got, deep impact, in my opinion, if there's an environment of care with a focus of development. And it's not just about the players. Naturally, as a coach, our main job is to develop our players, but I got to see from so many great people in San Antonio, then going to Atlanta and Milwaukee, the staffs I was a part of there, and through the leadership of Pop and through Bud. And now I hope I try to create that here, is that if I'm setting an example, to my coaching staff, they're then going to carry that to the players. So if I'm pouring into our coaches and showing them how to become better scouts and better, player development managers and, better with the analytics, but also in turn, allowing them to help me get better and challenge me, that's true development. It's not just, I have all the answers, let me just pour that into you. In San Antonio, they were open-minded to anyone bringing ideas to them and challenging you sometimes. Hey, what would you do in this situation? You'd freeze for a second, go, they're actually asking me what I would do to help said player get better, or what I would do against this team in the NBA finals or something like that. But they wanted to challenge you. And that just got you in the customary, feel of like, hey, they're pouring into me because I'm trying to pour into them and help them, but that's reciprocal. So creating that environment, again, of care and development has been at the core since I started. That's why I always say I've been fortunate and blessed in my career journey. But it's kind of one of those pay it forward. I've gained so much, and now in this position because of so many people, I need to do that for the staff that's around me. And hopefully I'm doing a good job. If you do a podcast with one of them, we'll see what they say. But if you're pouring into others and allowing them to pour into you, that's just reciprocated throughout. And then at the end of the day, hopefully your players are feeling that you're helping them get better. They're helping you get better. That's how we get better. So simple little formula, not always easy day to day, but at its core, if you embrace that, it makes a big difference.
Of course. And it takes work. And, you've been, you mentioned Coach Bud. who has had a tremendous amount of success in Atlanta and now Milwaukee. We're all familiar with how this last season ended with his first championship as a head coach. And I want to hear for him and also yourself. You're coming from San Antonio, this great culture that's won championships, great coaches, development, growth, great players. Was Coach Bud really kind of putting his own spin on the Spurs winning culture, or was it the same? How did the culture differ at all, or how did it stay the same in Atlanta and Milwaukee?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Bud definitely had a lot of the primary core values and tenets that were from San Antonio, but naturally he had to create his own version of that. When you go into a new organization, you don't want to be tooting your own horn that, hey, this is how we did it there, and this is how it should be done here. That can turn people away. Coming in day one saying, this is how we are going to build together. I'm a product of my experience and my beliefs. He did an unbelievable job building a staff, obviously working closely with the front office to build successful teams in Atlanta, but sharing, their different visions and how they were going to ultimately collaborate together and create a new vision in Atlanta. Obviously, I'm trying to think about all the coaches that came through Atlanta and then through Milwaukee. I think there was 2 or 3 or 4 of us that had San Antonio roots, but then the other half of the staff was from other organizations. So really diversifying, our culture and the growth. And when you talk about culture, it's a buzzword. A lot of people, how do you define that? Well, to me, it's an evolving thing. It's not set in stone. It's not engraved on stones. It's a living, breathing thing that is based on people. So obviously, Bud was heavily influenced from his time with Pop and the other assistant coaches, and definitely the players that he worked with. Brought some people, me being one of them, from San Antonio to say, hey, this is what I believe in. Let's try to build it. And this is my different spin. And very similar to my experience going from Atlanta to Milwaukee and creating that culture in Milwaukee, but now in Memphis. Of course, there's things from San Antonio, Atlanta, and Milwaukee that I'm bringing to Memphis, but I have my own spin on it. I have my own coaching voice behind it. There may be similar, pieces of language and terminology that we have. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to help lead the charge here with my partner, Zach Kleiman, our GM, we're going to sit down in a room and say, what do we believe in through our experiences, and make that the Grizzlies way, the Grizzly standard that we talk about. So Bud did a phenomenal job of doing that, and give him a lot of credit, because it's sometimes easy just to copycat. But if you're really going to take something to the next level and get people in a new environment to buy in, you have to have them understand that we're doing this together, and this is a new way of doing things.
Totally. And you've had such a cool education, right? Like coming through and learning from all those coaches you just mentioned, Coach Jones, Quinn Snyder, Coach Popovich, Coach Budenholzer. And then you get a head coaching job in the NBA at a very young age, which is awesome, right? Like, this is what we are striving for as young coaches. Like, we want these opportunities, and much like I'm sure you were, I was always kind of thinking in those terms, like, okay, how am I going to run things when I get to that job? And I just want to hear from you, walking into Memphis as a young coach. I know you've talked before about building your staff and having coaches on your staff that will challenge you. And if you could just kind of elaborate a little bit about building that staff and kind of like how you earned the trust and respect of the players coming in early on in Memphis.
Oh, how much time do we have?
That's a big question.
This is the absolute most important thing when anytime I talk about my coaching career, priorities of mine, it's people. It's absolutely people. I'm not the only person that has an impact on our teams and organization success. There's not one player that has an impact. It's the entire team. So, as I came in, obviously I learned a lot from a lot of people, as you said, head coaches, but I learned a lot from assistant coaches too, and understanding different dynamics on staff. How, you talk about all the time, we're basically a second family. We're together all the time. We're going to talk basketball to the midnight hours, but are we also going to just talk about life and family and enjoy being around each other, and hobbies and interests and concerns, and struggles in life? Because we're all walking, similar paths, because we share basketball together, but different paths too. So how can we also embrace each other and learn from each other, not just from basketball, but from life? So I was very intentional about getting a very diverse coaching staff. My first year, half the staff I had known, I had either coached for, coached with, coached, former players that I actually coached, and then coaches that I didn't really know, and went through a vetting out process to understand, how can I get people in here from different backgrounds, different ways of thinking, different experiences. And at the end of the day, I took a step back and said, what kind of fit is this person going to have? Are they going to be motivated by challenging me and our players every day to get better and have an impact on hopefully building a championship team here in Memphis? But more than that, are we going to be able to enjoy being around each other and be able to have the successful moments and the struggles and be able to work together and enjoy that process, enjoy that journey together, share those experiences. I always talk about experiences. So within all that, what's our relationship going to be? Are we going to be able to be strong together through the ups and the downs, the basketball, the non-basketball? And then with players, how did I try to, get involved early and help them understand who I am as a coach and what we're trying to build here? And, obviously, this is what our defensive rotation is and offensive plays and this and that in the basketball. Just want to get to know them as people. We'll spend a lot of time working on basketball, doing drills, watching film, playing games, but just really sitting down and getting to know them. What makes them tick? What are they interested in? What's their basketball journey been? Very similar when we talk about establishing cultures, like getting their vision on things, and then ultimately trying to share my vision so that they had a comfort with where I was coming from, and hopefully they got to see the coaching staff I was I was assembling, that they knew, hey, these coaches are going to care for us. They're going to push us. They're going to challenge us because that's how I want to be coached, on a daily basis. But we're going to share this journey together. And, I tell them all the time, I don't have all the answers. If you're looking at me to have all the answers, then, I'm not the guy. I want to be able to be open-minded and have you challenge me, because if you're embracing it, you're owning everything that we're trying to do as a team. We all have a responsibility. So I really encourage that. I think the players really enjoyed that early on, and hopefully the environment we've created is one where guys are really excited to be around each other. They're excited about the relationships they form, not just with their teammates, but with their coaches. Life extends beyond the court. We're more than just a basketball team. We're more than just basketball players and basketball coaches. And I learned that a lot when I first started coaching. So be able to impart that on people makes them, really excited about being part of the team, and hopefully it leads to some really good success on the floor too.
Yeah, and you guys are definitely trending that way. I love the authenticity of what you're talking about, Taylor. Not specific to what basketball system you're going to run or what defense or what out of bounds play you're going to run, but really kind of like this holistic vision of creating a connected team. And I think like authenticity in your coaching is also kind of coming through in your answer as well. You don't have all the answers. And I think players nowadays don't expect you to. I don't think they want perfect leaders. I think they want human leaders. Yeah. And like, the ability to admit a mistake if you make it, or the ability just to like hold yourself accountable to the same high standards you're holding to them. And I guess this kind of plays into having that kind of growth culture where you can challenge the players, but at the same time, you can be challenged by the coaching staff and the players as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of, just add one more thing to kind of like this little last piece of the conversation we just had is, I sometimes sum it up with our coaches, and especially last year got really tested, with COVID and new protocols and new lifestyle, new travel restrictions and practice restrictions. And I always talk about how are we going to work together and how are we going to play together? And beyond that, especially last year tested, it brought in a new phrase. It's how are we going to work together and play together? That's what we talk about. How are we going to embrace each other in the work environment? Ultimately, how are we going to play on the court? Because that's the final product, of all the stuff you've done behind the scenes and practices and individual sessions and so on and so forth. But how are we going to live together? How are we going to embrace each other in the moments that aren't centered around basketball? I mean, when you think about it, it's a 48-minute game. It's 2.5 hours. Your practice is anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. You got some film sessions, but you also have a lot of other time just together on planes, in locker rooms, at meals, just in the facility without practice going on. So how are we going to live together? And last year was a big test because we had to socially distance. We had to keep each other safe. And I think that's something that we can't forget is the environment you're creating goes beyond just what you're doing on a work environment. So, I can talk pick and roll coverages and game strategies to the nth degree, but, if everyone that, I'm working with players and staff understand we're coming in here more than just for basketball. It's how we're treating each other. It's how we're interacting, how we're challenging each other, how we're holding each other accountable in a lot of different ways. It's only going to hopefully and really motivate people knowing that we're striving for excellence and we all have a responsibility to that. So it's a daily process, daily education. But as you said, if I'm doing my job teaching and educating everyone around me, I have to be looking at the mirror every single day going, am I holding it up to that standard that we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love kind of like what I'm thinking of like the teams that I've been on in football. And what I used to always tell people is the games are such a small fraction of what actually it means to be a coach or a professional or a high level college player. It's a fraction. It's meetings, it's traveling together, it's dealing with after practice when you've had a fight. There's all these different dynamics that are at play, and the game is literally less than 1% of what being a team is actually about. And so I just love what you said about kind of like it being permeating everything that you do and all the relationships. The teams that have been all about the games are not the teams that reach kind of that highest level of their potential. And it's the teams that kind of like embrace that relationship piece that we're able to grow and kind of have a grander meaning than just wins and losses. So I really appreciate you saying that. And, you're in the process of building, this is year 3. In Memphis. And last year, you guys had a winning record. Obviously, you've got some young players that are really starting to develop very, very well, in addition to just the team as a whole. And you're starting to get a lot of expectations. And so I just want to know from your perspective, do you welcome the expectations, or is your mentality more, we're going to ignore that noise and that has no effect on our day-to-day?
Yeah, all that matters is what we believe. Naturally, everyone knows there's expectations that come externally, but for us, we're going to have expectations of ourselves every year. From day one, I set expectations, with our GM of what we were building here. Obviously, my first team meeting, before day one of training camp, I set expectations of how we're going to build and set a foundation, and then challenge ourselves from year 1 to year 2 to how to get better and continue to, I called it fortifying our foundation. You're going to lay your foundation. There's going to be cracks or unevenness and things like that. But how are you going to fortify it and identify the areas of weakness and get better? And then as we've kind of laid a little bit more on our foundation after year 2, now it's about protecting our foundation and about doing everything that we can to make sure whatever threats are coming our way, obviously it's games, but external noise or this or that we keep the focus on what we can control every single day. So I'll have a new phrase for year 4 and hopefully 5, and I'm blessed to be here 10, 15, 20 years. I always come up with some kind of little coachy phrase, but if we're just continuing to be focused on what do we control, what do we believe in, what are our core principles, that's going to get us to success. And fortunately, there's been a lot of great buy-in, a lot of great ownership throughout, players and staff to see that success from year 1 to year 2. But we know in this industry and business and sport we play, there's nothing guaranteed. But if you're embracing, what that progression is going to be like year to year to year, and just keep getting better, marginal gains, better and better, hopefully it leads to, the pinnacle of winning a championship. So that's the way I know it. Coaches come from different backgrounds and different strategies and philosophies, but there's not one way to coach at the end of the day, as I said earlier in our conversation. So for me, this is our belief. And if we can all share in that belief, you're going to hopefully get the most energy and effort and commitment out of everyone, regardless of the result. But hopefully, if you keep striving with that mentality year after year, keep pushing together, strive for more, you'll get to the mountaintop. So hopefully that comes sooner than later. And, I'm very proud of what our group's done in 2 years and looking forward to more here in year 3.
Absolutely. The process-driven approach always beats the results-oriented approach. So love that. And last couple of questions here, and I'll get you out of here, Taylor. First question is, I've heard a lot about your organizational skills. Some might describe them as elite.
Sure.
And I just want to know how that's helped you separate as a leader on your coaching journey.
Oh boy. I don't know if it's necessarily separated me. I think it's allowed me, with how I coach and how I operate every single day, to really prioritize, what's important, to also kind of push aside the things that aren't important, wasted time. I'm very big on efficiency, right? That's a very sports term. How are you going to be efficient? and get the, key results that you want. So I'm definitely OCD. I've inherited that. I don't know if I've mastered it or elite, or I know many friends poke fun of me, but it just allows me to just kind of understand my train of thought. And I will say, obviously I've been very OCD and habit driven and routine driven, that, what we talked about earlier, living in the gray and having feel as a coach. I can be saying, this is what I got to do, and this is, priority number 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and this is how it's got to be. It's how it's got to be. But we know how life goes. Basketball doesn't go that way. Life doesn't go that way. You have to adapt and change. So as we said, and I think you echoed it, you have to prepare. So I think it allowed me to prepare for all situations to the best of my ability, to allow me to have confidence that whenever I had to make a decision, I've done all the prep work, and I was able to say, well, I thought I was going to do that, but no, this is the best alternative. Let me go with that. So I wish I could give you a grid and a matrix, and this is how I do it. I'm big into color coding and doing stuff like that. But it just helps train my mind and ultimately train what I believe in my heart to hopefully make the best decisions possible, in a game, out of a game, whatever it is in life. So I'd like to think my OCD, as sometimes can be poked fun at, has been a strength of mine.
Okay. Yes. I mean, elite organizational skills equals OCD, I guess, at certain levels. Well, great. Well, like we kind of mentioned at the beginning, we're both from Dallas, and just want to know, when you guys come back to Dallas, and let's just say you've got an extra day to maybe grab dinner, where are you going in Dallas, or what type of food are you trying to get for that dinner that evening?
Oh, it's Tex-Mex all the way. It's Mi Casina, either in Highland Park Village, or I think it's on Preston and Forest. Yeah, I think it's Forest and Preston. So one of those locations, they're childhood haunts of mine. So my mom and I usually get together, and then I usually grab a burger with my dad at Burger House over by SMU's campus. So got to get a good burger and fries, but Tex-Mex is definitely king.
That is a great two-day trip to Dallas there. That's fantastic. Yes. I love the Tex-Mex. Mia's is my personal favorite, but in anything where you can get, you can't go wrong. Some fajitas and a cold beer, you're good to go. Well, Taylor, thank you so much. I know you're busy, and good luck this season, and look forward to chatting with you soon, man.
Awesome, Evan. It was awesome. Great catching up. Long overdue. Looking forward to having more catch ups. All the best to you and the family, and good luck with all that you're doing with, just talking about leadership in sports. It makes a huge difference. So thanks for what you're doing, and looking forward to getting back on with you.
Awesome. Appreciate that, man.